Welcome to the Miller Martial Arts Podcast, Episode 6. Brought to you by Miller Martial Arts.
Quarantined. Miller Martial Arts.
Today, we have a very special guest, medically retired United States Marine Corps Combat Engineer, medically retired United States Air Marshal, Miller Martial Arts and Fitness yoga instructor, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, expert Jigglypuff player on Super Smash Brothers.
God damn it.
Joe Aloi.
What's
Welcome
up?
to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you've been here with us a few times before, and you're always gonna be our Jamie. That's what you are, and I think that the people have been wanting to hear your story, and so we're gonna tell the people a little bit about you today, and we're gonna get into how you came to be, your origin story, and how you found us here.
Yeah.
And what led you to the spot that you're in right now.
All right.
Pretty
Let's
cool.
do it.
All right. Gut check. As you know, we have to do this first. Get everybody loosened up.
Let's do it.
What's your morning routine? What do you do to get your day started before whatever it is that you do?
So I have 2 kids, both of them under 2. And so my wife stayed home. So she gets up with the kids. I stay in bed. And I just listen to them outside in the living room playing and yelling and screaming. And I'm like, oh, God, I got to get up. I got to get up. So once my daughter runs in my room and, Daddy, time to get up, that's when I know I got to get going.
Yeah.
But, I'm pretty simple. I fast up until about 10 o'clock. I don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
Take my morning vitamins. I'm a big vitamin guy. I follow Ben Greenfield, Rhonda Patrick, all those Joe Rogan-esques.
Mm-hmm.
On it. Usually supplies all my vitamins, stuff
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. So, but yeah, I'll get up, I'll drink a glass of water, do my morning constitution and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, it's just usually hit the gym, come here. Don't have any like meditation or anything else. Don't really have any big stretches. A lot of times, like if we rolled late the night before or something, I'll get up and just like roll through all my joints. So I start. It's kind of like starting from head to toe. So you start with your neck, roll your neck out, go to move to your shoulders, move to your elbows, move to your wrist, move to the waist, move to your knees, and just kind of make sure everything's got lubrication in it, stuff like that.
Yeah, you've done that with us before. I remember when we brought in Keith from Core Physical Therapy.
Yeah.
You had us just do that as like a little light warm up to just like get all the joints lubricated and get your body a little warmed up.
Yeah, and I love that in the morning because you're not like focused, you're just detached and you're just moving through whatever your body is bringing to the table that day. Some days it's great, some days you're like, oh my God, this left hip is killing me. So just gives you a chance to kind of like reconnect with your body after being in dream sleep for the last how many hours.
So you're not like a 5 a.m. type of guy, get up and lift.
No.
Or listen to a podcast or anything like that. You just
No, I mean, because
you kind of do what
my
I do.
house is so hectic. Like
Yeah.
it's so hectic, and anybody who doesn't have kids, and they're like, "Oh man, this is nice." You know, I say that to friends that don't have kids. They're like, "You have no idea." Like kids just screaming in the living room, and you go in there, and it's like, "What's going on?" Elsa's not on. Like, you know, like I think they're getting stabbed. So, but no, I mean, I would say before I had kids, I had an actual routine. I would get up and like, hey, 6 a.m. the alarm clock goes off, and I'm getting on the bike. I'm going to do 20 miles on the bike. Then I'm going to come here and I'm going to roll for the morning class, and I'm going to teach class, and then, you know, and now moving and transitioning and all that other stuff. It's like I just want to go back to bed. I'll roll later tonight, but no. It's there's no set routine anymore. There's just chaos and trying to filter through it and all that stuff.
So, did you have any nicknames growing up? Whether it was like high school or early, or in the Corps, or in the Marshal Service?
Any nicknames? I mean, I've been Joe Boy Fresh for a long time.
Yeah. Where'd that come from?
A buddy of mine that
self-dubbed or no?
Well, no, it wasn't self-dubbed. A buddy of mine, back in the day, we were trying to think of good names for Xbox Live. We were playing Halo, Modern Warfare, and stuff like that. And so he was sitting around, and we were listening to the song "Dope Boy Fresh," and he was like, "Joe Boy Fresh, that's it," and it kind of just stuck. So I was JBF for a long time, and Joe Boy Fresh. In high school, I was Snow, and I don't know where that came from. Like, all the guys on the football team called me Snow.
Were you? You're not really pale.
No. I think it was just like Joe, but Snow, and just I don't know how it came to be, but
okay.
Jason and Vincent and everybody else, I was Snow. So I'm sure I'm in all their phones right now as Snow.
And when you were in the Corps, you didn't have like stupid nicknames you gave each other, or you just didn't get dubbed with.
I don't think I got dubbed a nickname. I mean, I was Aloi, or my last name is Aloi.
We butcher that over here. Yeah. We're no different over here.
I mean, they called me Metal and Aloi and all that kind of stuff. But I never got dubbed like, nothing cool.
So just Joe Boy Fresh. So where did the nickname Jiggly Joe and Jiggly Joe Boy Fresh come from?
So that would be a Miller brother combination of Micah Miller and you.
Okay. What happened here?
So this is bullshit. I got stuck. So we like to play Super Smash. Derek and everybody gets over there, and you guys are really good at Super Smash. And I am not good at Super Smash because I didn't grow up playing those type of games. I did adult games.
Okay.
So anyway, I actually have to wear a Jigglypuff patch on my gi now because of Micah. Thank you. I don't think I'll ever get rid of that. But so we play Super Smash, and if you lose, then the other guy that won gets to pick who the first loser was character. And I got stuck with Jigglypuff like 15 times in a row.
Right. We saw that you
but
were
the fucker
obviously
falls asleep.
Yeah.
And he can't move. So it's not. There's no fairness to this.
So we saw that Joe didn't know how to fight very well with Jigglypuff, so we just kept making him be Jigglypuff. So after he lost the first time, he obviously kept losing the first time, and we just kept making him be Jigglypuff
Every time.
And he would just fall asleep, and while he was sleeping, we would just kick his ass.
Yeah.
All right.
I try to avoid playing that now. I can't come over.
Yeah. What's your favorite piece of martial arts training equipment?
I would say my the thing that I never leave without is my mouthpiece. I think starting and finishing with a good mouthpiece, something that's going to stay in, that's not going to bother you.
Give me a fist bump. All right. Hope you guys heard that.
But yeah, I mean, it's become imperative that I have it because I get hit in the mouth so many times.
In grappling.
Just in grappling, yeah. Somebody flails or you try to get out of somewhere and, I was a guy that had black eyes like 6 times in a row.
Yeah.
But yeah, a mouthpiece. And I think a good pair of underwear is probably my 2 go-tos.
Yeah. Mouthpiece style. You like the double decker? You like the single?
No, I use a single. And they're gonna Iron Jaw mouthpiece actually makes my mouthpiece.
Okay.
Jesse's guy in Memphis.
Okay.
And
cool.
if you guys are interested, he's Iron Jaw on Facebook. You can reach out to him.
They got a bunch of different like options for your budgets, right? Something probably super cheap, and then it goes all the way up to probably $300 or somewhere like that. Is that how they would work?
Yeah, it was. I think if you want something custom, like depending on color, depending on if you want your name in it, all that other stuff, it all varies. But you can get like something very generic, or you can get all the way up to the extreme, like grills and stuff. But cool. I think it's one of those things. If you do grapple or you do strike, and you ever get hit in the face, you're like, oh man, my teeth clattered or something like that, or you chip a tooth. It's like you can spend $100 on a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
I mean, out of all the gear that you have, if you break a tooth, it's going to suck. So,
What about with yoga? What's your favorite piece of yoga equipment?
Yoga, the big thing is I really like having blocks, and blocks are they're just foam blocks. They're little squares that actually brings the ground closer to you. So a lot of people struggle with obviously flexibility, but if I told you to stand up and get your hands to the floor, or you're going to compensate in some way, like you're going to bend your knees, you're going to round your back out, or you're going to stand there and like reach down to your knees or your ankles because you can't touch the floor, and you haven't touched the floor in forever. Well, the blocks are cheap, inexpensive. You can use stacks of books, but just something to bring the ground closer to you, so you can keep that form in the pose without actually compensating to just be able to get to the position. Mm-hmm. So little, $6 foam blocks.
So you don't, not a particular brand, or you just blocks. That's
no,
cool.
I mean, I've run the gambit of like Lululemon gives a good discount, like great shorts, for yoga shorts and stuff like that. And I mean, at the end of the day, everything's so internal with yoga. So like the external portion of like, hey, I need this shirt, or hey, I need these shorts. It doesn't really matter. Not like.
So like nobody comes up to you and say, hey, bro, what kind of mat are you running?
Yeah, nobody says that. Yeah.
Oh, see, like that, I don't.
Now that does happen. Like, hey, what? If somebody's looking for a new mat, they'll be like, hey, what mat do you like? Like,
well, since I brought it up, what mat do you like? I got an On It mat.
Yeah, I like On It. I really like Lululemon puts out great mats. I think I'm drawing a blank on mats right now, but Lululemon puts out a great mat. I think you'll see a lot of like the cork mats, especially like in really hot like Bikram style classes, that they're actually cork material. Mm-hmm. It gives you a lot of grip. But yeah, I think all those are great choices. It's a yoga mat.
What for concealed carry? What's your go-to?
So I run a couple different things. Concealed carry, I like the my SIG 365 XL, mm-hmm. Running a Romeo 0 red dot on top.
Strong.
I think it's probably my go-to. If you ask me, hey, you got to carry this every day, it mm-hmm. would be it. For just like a little throw in the pocket gun, I run a little Ruger 380 LCP.
Yeah, awesome choice. What do you do? Just like one of those little sleeve holsters and put it in your pocket or whatever?
Yeah. Because there's times like you don't want to put a big gun on. You don't want to have anything rubbing or anything else. It's nice just like, hey, I'm throw this in the pocket.
You're wearing some Lululemon shorts.
Yeah.
You just need something to go in a fanny pack or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually, it's in my fanny pack right there.
All right. Right on.
But yeah, I'll run that. I'll run, I'm not a big Glock guy, but I've got, Glock 19. I got mm-hmm. a bunch of stuff. So it just depends on what I feel like putting on that day.
All right. So the go-to is probably the XL, though?
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Day. Yeah, I love that gun. You've been training about 2 years now. Mm-hmm. What's your biggest pet peeve on the jiu-jitsu mat? I know you got one.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest pet peeve is probably hygiene. Is the number one, and then I don't know. But hygiene is I think is critical.
There's so much that goes into hygiene. Yeah. Like you got, are you keeping your hair or facial hair well kept? Do you smell good or bad? Are your nails long? Is that which one is like the one of?
Yeah, nails is bad, and then like I know it's difficult for people that train at night and stuff, like they're leaving work to like grab a shower, or like they worked outside all day or something like that, and then you come in and you're like, man, God bless, you smell like a foot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then now I've got to get in close quarters with you, whereas like
extreme close quarters.
Yeah. And I mean, so that's probably the big one. And then I think here you promote such a a very traditional and very courteous and structured academy.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that when we went to Florida at Pahumpas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I think that I really enjoy that structure. I really enjoy that, hey, you know, this is a green belts and above class, or hey, this is an intro level, and there's guys that are actually coming up to the black belts, shaking hands, you know, and thanking them for, you know, teaching classes and stuff like that. Like, I really like that.
I dig that too. I think it's important to have that structure. I don't think it should get into the realm of like hero worship. I don't think that, you know, you need to like sacrifice your firstborn, you know, to this guy who's teaching you. But I think it's important to have that, like a, and if anything, just for like, just like the history part, like tradition, you know, like just kind of keep that going. Yeah. Take some stuff from like judo, you know, even though like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, there's like, I guess you could say different people have like different, you know, preferences on it, even in Brazil. It's not like in Brazil they all do it this way. Very chill and lax from my understanding in a lot of places over there too. So I think it's just like you just pick what you like and run with it.
Yeah. That'd probably be my biggest pet peeve is hygiene, and this, you know, you get scratched or something like that, or, you know,
a smelly rash guard has to be one of mine.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is like we all deal with that problem, but a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. It's like, because when you pull out of the laundry, it smells fine.
Yeah.
And then when you sweat, it releases the, I don't know the science of it, but I don't gotta know. The bro science already tells me that it's releasing something in it, and all of a sudden it smells funky. So there's like different stuff you can do with that type of thing. Like you can add like white vinegar or vinegar into a tub, let it soak for a while. We've got Defense Soap has made all these products for well over a decade, and people act so surprised when they've heard of Defense Soap, but it's like all they thought they made was soap.
Right.
They've got a laundry additive that you just put in your like fabric softener, and it's good for like 30 loads. And it will protect all your clothes, not just your training clothes. And it has the antimicrobial. I guess like if it didn't have the antimicrobial, that contributes to the dingy smell.
Right.
But you'll have a new rash guard that you've had for 3 months that you paid $60 for, and it smells awful. You're like, well, I'm not throwing this away.
Right.
I've only had it for 3 months.
Yeah.
Well, they just don't know that there's other stuff you can do, and that's like another thing. It's called like Super Shield or something like that. But yeah.
But I'll take like all my gis. I'll take my no gi stuff, and you know, I'll put it in the bathtub and fill it up with warm water, and then I'll borax and white vinegar and stuff like that. Just because, I mean, you can actually see the water start to turn black on top, like, you know, just the grime and crud that's coming out of it. So. But yeah,
hygiene. Favorite takedown.
Favorite takedown.
It's okay if you're not good at it. What's your favorite takedown? What's the one you think is the coolest?
I don't know.
What do you do the best? Guard pull.
Yeah, guard pull. No, favorite takedown. I like the single leg run the pipe. It's awesome, probably my favorite, just because I think I pick it up faster. And then single leg takedown.
Okay.
Run the pipe.
Sweep.
Hook sweep.
From butterfly.
Butterfly.
Pass.
I like the I like that yin yang. Not yin yang. The X pass. That push pull X pass, and they just, dude, when you do it, you just spin them like a top. Yeah.
Submission.
Favorite submission is Doris.
Yeah, really cool.
Hashtag Lathan.
Yeah, that's a really cool sub. Favorite acai bowl toppings.
I like drizzled peanut butter, dark chocolate chips, sliced strawberries, and then shredded coconut. My wife puts that shit together in the mornings. Not all the time, but when I have it, like she lays it out like it's a gourmet meal. You know, I'm like, oh God, yeah,
strong.
It's gonna be good.
Who's your favorite Brazilian jiu-jitsu player of all time?
Of all time, wow. I love Marcelo. I like his style. I love Blaine Butterfly. Of course, right now I'm a big follower of Gordon Ryan.
Yeah, man. Nothing wrong with that, dude. Say how you feel.
But yeah, those two are probably my favorite as of right now. But if it came down, I could only pick one ever, it'd be Marcelo.
Yeah. What about mixed martial arts fighter?
Favorite of all time, Pitbull, Thiago Alves.
Man, there he is. For the people that are watching on YouTube, maybe you can see Thiago Alves right there. Where my finger's pointing.
Yeah, Thiago. Right now, I really love Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, Dorino.
He's
badass jiu-jitsu player. Good kickboxer too. Good MMA fighter. Period.
Yeah.
But world class jiu-jitsu.
My favorite Miller of all time is Jim Miller.
Jim.
Jen and Dan, like they
no
were
offense taken.
Coming up. They were my favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Jim Miller's a beast.
But yeah, it's always when I think back, like what got me excited about mixed martial arts and stuff like that is watching Pitbull fight.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Watching him turn people's legs to nothing. All right. Your origin. Where were you born? What was growing up like?
So I was born in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, a small town outside Knoxville, so all the way on the east side of the state. And growing up was great. I got two sisters. Lived in a small town where it was kind of like you would think of. It was a football town. It's like football pretty much ran the town. It would shut down on Friday nights. Everybody be at the game. The stadium's kind of built in like a hole. So everybody came out and picnicked on the hill and stuff like that. So really good tradition. But yeah, I grew up there. Mom was a nurse. Dad worked he worked for DOE, Department of Energy. And he was there. So the plant is there. There's basically they harness the uranium that go in all the nuclear warheads there. So Oak Ridge has a pretty substantial history, and you can get into that. You can Google Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It was a secret city that was started in World War II. And basically, they brought in all these chemists and scientists and everything else in this city that was built in the hills. And it was all gated off. You couldn't get in there. And they developed these plants where they were harnessing the uranium to put in the 2 atomic bombs that we dropped on Japan. So that's kind of the history of how Oak Ridge came to be. And then once, they opened it up to the public, people started moving in, working at the plant, all that kind of stuff.
And for how long was your dad harvesting uranium for the aliens to build their craft?
Yeah.
You can tell us now.
See, that's the funny thing. Growing up is I didn't know what my dad did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of very common there that people's parents that work at the plant, you'd be like, hey, what does your dad do? Oh, they work at the plant. Or your teachers would be like, hey, what does your dad do? He works at the plant. I'm like, I don't know what he does. Still to this day, he'd be like, oh, yeah, I worked in waste removal. And I'm like, okay.
You know who says that type of thing?
Who?
Mobsters.
Yeah.
And liars.
The CIA. Yeah. I work in waste removal.
Mobsters and liars.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's good. Okay, so what was the age gap between you and your sisters?
So I've got an older sister that's 6 years older than me, and then me and my younger sister are 18 months apart.
Okay.
So really close. And it's funny because growing up, me and my older sister were close, and now we're not. And me and my little sister are close. But me and my little sister were in competition a lot. So we played competitive sports growing up. Now I'm starting to see that kind of play out with how I'm approaching jiu-jitsu and other stuff. So we started out playing competitive soccer, me and her both. So my dad would take me to a tournament on the weekends, and then my sister would go to a tournament. And then in the meantime, like we had practice 4 days a week. We were driving
Soccer.
Dude,
you were doing really competitive soccer 4 days a week?
Yeah.
How old were you?
So we started playing competitive ball in the U9s, so the under 9s, and then played all through it. My sister played college soccer at Alabama. I had several offers and joined the Marine Corps. Mom was pissed about that. She's probably still pissed about it. But yeah, we started doing that, and that's where I saw a lot of competition with my younger sister because, we'd be going to state, and girls would be going to state and all that kind of stuff. And then it would carry over into, playing at schools and middle school, high school, all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, we were busy for sure.
So what other sports did you play growing up, or what other hobbies did you have?
I was a sports fanatic. So I played any and everything. I played roller hockey. I played ice hockey. I played tennis. I played soccer. I played baseball. It was just whatever I could get into.
So athletics were really important.
It was really important to my family.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where we didn't have anything else to do. And it was a different time, too. It was kind of one of those things like, hey, I'm going to ride to Big Turtle Park and play baseball. And there were kids that rode their bike there.
Right.
Now you don't do that.
Nobody lets their kids ride a bike anywhere.
Right. But it would be nothing for me to ride my bike to the boys' club, and go play basketball until dark, and then I ride my bike back. It's just it's so different now. But that was childhood growing up in Oak Ridge, and I guess now having kids, I see things differently. But my parents worked all the time, so my dad would work evening shift, so he wouldn't get home until noon. And then
was there a day shift where he worked?
Yeah.
Would they do anything in the daylight, or were
yeah.
they only operating at night?
I mean, from my understanding, as a young kid,
in his waste removal business.
Yeah. But yeah, they switched. So like, I remember several times having to go sit at the nurses' lounge at the hospital because there was no child care or anything else. My mom didn't have any. My dad was at work, so me and my little sister would go up there, and
so, like you said, you guys were like competitive growing up, like with one another and like pushing each other with regard to athletics. Have you tried to get her for wherever she lives on the jiu-jitsu track?
No,
not her cup of tea.
No, she. I don't know that she would be interested in it, to be honest. She's got 2 kids. Her and her husband kind of live off the grid, so to speak. Actually, her husband, former Marine, and now works at the plant that my dad worked at. So they live out. They've got chickens and ducks. Is that
plant still there doing the same exact type of thing?
Full operation.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of funny because growing up, we lived like a mile and a half from the front gate of the plant. And when 9/11 happened, they let us go from school. Of course, I was a freshman in high school when that happened. And I came home, my dad was there. And I was like, something's weird. Like, my dad's home, when I get home, something's weird. So we saw everything on the news and everything else in school. But I was like, Dad, what happens if, something happens to the plant? He's like, oh, we'll be gone. Like, we're so close to it. If it blows up, we're dead. And I'm like, oh, shit. We're a mile and a half. He's like, yeah, if they target that, like, we're dead. So no reason to run or anything else. Like, pack a bag, let's get out of here. It's like, oh, no, we're going.
Yeah. Just sky high.
Yeah.
What'd you want to be when you were growing up?
I think ever since I was a kid, I knew I was going to be a Marine.
You knew that?
I knew that. It's funny because my grandfather. So I have a long history of Marine Corps in my background. So my grandfather, actually, his dad was in the Marine Corps.
Your great-granddad.
My great-grandfather fought in World War One.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather fought in Vietnam, and my dad was in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
So all of them in the Marine Corps. So my grandfather did 26 years in the Marine Corps. He was a Marine Corps drum major. He was the White House electrician. So he was in the White House with JFK, LBJ, all those guys. Actually, doing all their electrical work in there. And then my
electrical work. I'm picking up on something that is a constant here.
And then my dad did 8 years in the Marine Corps. So when I was a kid, like they used to dress me in camis and you know and make me say "oorah" and like all that kind of stuff. So coming up, I was like, I'm joining the Marine Corps. That's all I want to do. And actually, what's funny is in elementary school, you had to write a letter to yourself for when you graduate. And the teachers in the Oak Ridge school system held on to the letters. And so when you graduated, they brought you this letter. And so I was sitting in civics in senior year, and they bring me this letter. I'm like, what the fuck is this? I don't remember anything about this. And I open it up, and the first couple sentences are like, well, Joe, you made it. Now it's time to join the Marine Corps. I was like third grade when I wrote it.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay. And I had already joined. Like, I already signed on the dotted line.
Wow.
And
so you didn't want to play soccer in college, or you didn't want to be a football player or cop or astronaut, or no, it was just like you just knew.
Yeah.
And like the way you described it earlier, it kind of sounds like it was almost like a blow to your mom. It couldn't have been unexpected.
No, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was a blow, but
she had a false hope that maybe
you look, and that you got to remember the times that we were in. So we were, OIF has just popped off, Operation Iraqi Freedom,
right?
2002, 2001, 2002. Everybody was moving in, all that other stuff, and then for me, actually watching the planes hit, I remember vividly sitting there and be like, well, we're going to war, and that just hitting a nerve inside me is like, I was pissed. I was like, I'm ready to go today. So it was interesting. My mom looking at it from her perspective as, oh, my son wants to go join the military,
Mm-hmm.
And then her wanting better things for me.
Yeah.
So I think we all want that for our kids. And, when a kid gets fixated on something, or like, no, I mean, I'm sure you can relate to that. And, somebody's been like, you want to be a fighter?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, you're good at baseball. Go play baseball. And for a parent, they're like, all right, you can go down this road, but you're going to do X, Y, Z. You're going to go to college. You're going to get a degree. And you can still fight, or you can still do whatever that you want to do. But I think that's what she wanted.
Right.
And I always promised her, like, I would go back and finish school and stuff like that.
Like college, you mean?
Yeah, college.
So when did you join the Marine Corps? You said, like, when you got this thing in high school that you had already signed. So
yeah, it was my senior year.
Was it like one of these, like, fucking career days where, like when they have all these colleges that come to like your gymnasium and set up, and they shake hands with you and give you flyers, and there's each of the branches of the military? Was it at one of these things that you signed, or no?
No, it was funny because so I used to ride around. I had a 96 Jeep Cherokee, and I had a USMC front license plate that my grandfather gave me, and it was just USMC. And then I came out one day in the parking lot, and there was a recruiter's card in my driver's side door. And so I ended up going down there and talking to him, and They had at this time. So this is 2005. At this time, war's in full swing. Everybody's going, all this other stuff. They're trying to recruit. And all these banners over all of the other recruiting offices. So the Navy, Air Force are like, hey, signing bonus, $10,000. All this other stuff. So I wasn't into that. I was like, no, I won't do it. I'm going to be a Marine.
Of course.
So
what kind of beatdown would your family have given you if you would have went in the Air Force?
It's actually really funny that my dad was like, hey, you want to explore? Like, I'll give you $10,000. My dad was that. And I think he already knew that I wasn't going to do that. But he was like, if I could do it again, I would probably go here because they've got the best food. And they have the best
gymnasiums.
Yeah. They have the best barracks, and here you get to work on computers, that kind of stuff. I was like, I don't want to do any of that. I'm here to shoot people.
Right.
And so he kind of understood, and there wasn't ever like any flack for it or anything else. But it was interesting because, I came out of school, there's that card in the door, and I was finally 18, so I could sign myself up if, my parents didn't want me to. So yeah, I ended up going down there and signing up, and I had to take the ASVAB and stuff like that. And I remember I took the ASVAB, and I got my scores back.
And
I was like, I scored, I can't remember what it was, upper 90s. And I was like, oh man, and my recruiter's like, man, great score. He's like, man, the options are open. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. What do I do?
There's something other than infantrymen in the Marines I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
Is that what you thought or no?
Well,
you kind of understood that they had other.
Yeah, they have other jobs and stuff like that. It's pretty open ended. Now, the Marine Corps is different in the fact that every Marine is a rifleman. So
right.
you'll hear that from everybody that was in. So even if you have an electrician job, that's your secondary MOS, so your military occupational specialty. So your primary is always rifleman. So I was like, yeah, man, I scored really well. This is what I want to do, and all that other stuff. And he was like, all right, let's see. Let me get on the computer. So he gets on the computer. He's like, all right, well, we have these options open to you. He's like, you can go infantry or you can go combat engineer. And I was like, well, what's the difference? He's like, well, in infantry, you shoot people. The other, when you blow people up.
Right.
And I was like, I like to blow things up.
So
that was it, though. There was no like, there's 1,000 jobs.
This
you can
guy
choose
tells
from.
you that your options are endless.
Yeah.
But then he presents two to you.
Yeah. I was excited. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna do something great. Like,
looking back on that now, and knowing what you know about how many options the Marine Corps actually have, what do you think about your recruiter?
I'm not gonna knock him.
Little bit of a scumbag.
I wouldn't say scumbag. I feel like, and I have a very skewed view of federal government in general now.
Right.
After being
in
the military and
federal
law enforcement level, I'm a little salty.
Okay.
But I understand the whole way it works. I understand the grand scheme and everything else. So he's looking at it as, I have to fill these shoes this month.
X amount of billets in these areas or these
Right.
MOSs.
Right.
So he's just doing his job.
He's just doing his job.
But looking back at it, was there something that you maybe weren't presented with that you could have done that maybe you would have went that track knowing what you know now?
Maybe.
Well, what would it be? Knowing everything the Marine Corps has to offer.
I don't know. I don't know that as an 18-year-old male at the time, I don't know that you could have offered me anything else. I'm like, yeah, I'll go down to Jacksonville and pack parachutes.
Yeah, I got you.
I wanted this.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it from the time I was a kid. When I would go back in the backyard and play Army, like I was in the Marine Corps, and so that was I mean, yes, he could have offered me, hey, you can be, computer aided design and whatever. I don't think I would have done anything else.
Tell us a little bit about what a combat engineer does.
So, combat engineer is a 1371. That's the nomenclature for the MOS. So, combat engineer is responsible for. There's many different facets. They are very well rounded, and I think it fit me very well in a sense that they're not great at any one thing, but they are good at everything. So their responsibilities up to and including they run demolitions, explosives, urban breaching, mine detection, creating fortified fighting positions, building and deconstruction of buildings, really run the gambit of an engineer.
I did a little bit of reading on it myself. It sounds almost like you guys are the shield. You guys like defend I don't know what you guys call it, platoon or unit or whatever, but you guys are like the shield. And what would the infantrymen be like? They are the sword,
right?
And you're the shield,
right?
And obviously you're capable of doing what they can do too. Like you said, you're very well rounded. But if you're a defender of the team,
yeah. And so like engineers are the ones that like clear minefields. Mm-hmm. Engineers are the ones that, hey, we want to get into this door. We need to figure out how to breach it. We're the ones you call. Hey, we think there's IEDs, on this strip of road. We're the ones that go out there with the mine detector. So when you played with the little army men back in the day and you had the one guy that was out there with the mine detector, that was us.
So what would be a situation where you would need to call in an EOD specialist?
Really and truly, any ordnance that's unexploded.
Once you find something?
Usually we mark it, and then you call in EOD, and they dismantle it. Mm-hmm. Whether they're going to set charge it right there or, they're going to whatever. They're going to pick it up and move it. They're the guys that know, okay, you got to cut the red wire.
Right.
They're the ones that know that kind of stuff. Engineers typically are the ones that just find it. And so a lot of times, like, you find an IED or you find what you think could be an IED. You mark it, everybody pulls back, and then you sit on it until you can get an EOD tech out there to look at it. But yeah, we did a lot of cool stuff. Like, got the opportunity to teach a little bit. Got the opportunity to play with some really cool stuff: Syntex, C4, TNT. A lot of stuff that goes boom. Played with a lot of deck cord. It's a cool field, and then you're attached to an infantry unit. So you carry a satchel charge. You carry what you need to be able to fulfill the mission. You're part of the mission. So it was cool. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
What'd you like about being an engineer or being in the Marine Corps specifically? What did you get out of it?
I got that sense of service. I knew I wanted to serve people and have the opportunities that offered. The Marine Corps was cool. That it's very small. It's kind of like jiu-jitsu in a sense that you can track down somebody's lineage real quick. Mm-hmm. And the Marine Corps is like that, and then, on average, there's probably worldwide, I don't know the numbers now, but 200,000 Marines. And then you look at like the Air Force and it's over 1 million. You look at the Army, it's over 1 million. So in those terms, it's very small. But the Marine Corps pushed me to a place that I didn't think I could get to. We always say like the body can't go where the mind's never been, and until you've pushed those limits, you won't know how far you can go. So it's one of those things, like, I'm very thankful for that, but it's also, I was a number, so it sucks in that regard, and I think everybody kind of deals with that once you kind of detach and you go back to civilian life, or you go back to stepping away from something so structured. It's hard. But while I was in it, I got the opportunity to do some very cool stuff and work with some amazing people, guys that are still lifelong friends.
Was it what you expected? Like, everybody probably said this to you like a 1,000 times. Like, when you go into basic training or boot camp, and everybody references Full Metal Jacket, and every Marine that I know says, yeah, that's exactly what boot camp was like. Past boot camp, with your family's history in the Marine Corps, you obviously had some sort of expectation about what boot camp would be like, but then what your career would be like thereafter. Was it, because you went in as an engineer, was it what you expected, or were some loopholes, or not loopholes, but were some like roadblocks thrown in your way, and you thought, man, like this isn't what I want it to be?
Yeah. When there's not a lot of choices, so you run into that, whereas like you have, it's
let me turn it.
Yeah. Yeah. Play a commercial.
Yeah, play a commercial. Brought to you by Miller Martial Arts.
That's quarantined right now.
Yeah.
Come down and check us out. Post quarantine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in an undisclosed location right now.
No, they're gonna know this room.
Maybe we made a replica.
We'll get into that deep state stuff.
There we go. Then they won't know where we are.
Yeah.
Maybe we're in a different dimension. They don't know.
That'd be dope.
As you were saying.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's a 9 to 5. You're not running and gunning. You're not, doing the cool stuff all the time. Like, it's very, it gets to be, the hurry up and wait is very real. So
A lot of training.
a lot of training.
A lot of waiting.
A lot of time in the field.
It was sucky.
Oh yeah, it sucked. And that's the parts that I don't miss. I miss the guys. I miss the day-to-day routine, because you knew, what you had upcoming the next day. There's no like real hiccups or anything else. Like, hey, we gotta, you gotta go qualify today. Like.
But doing, from my life that I've had in a team environment, doing shitty things together, embracing the suck, if you will, but doing anything that sucks, when you're doing that with other people that are doing the same thing, it creates like a cohesion.
Oh yeah.
So you're like, I was just talking about the suckiness of it, but then you instantly said, I miss the guys. And I think that like, that's what helps create that unity between people, is doing these things that you hate together, or these things that are uncomfortable. You're doing it with other people who are also doing it. So you guys, even though you might have to, each of you is responsible for something as an individual, you're doing it together, which creates that team atmosphere.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's what I was saying. It gave me a lot in the sense of mental strength, knowing what I could and couldn't overcome. It's very transparent. It ebbs and flows, and people who on the outside looking in, they see like all these hard chargers and everything else, and it is very much that,
right?
But what they don't see is like the bullshit where we sat on the tarmac for 6 hours waiting for somebody to tell us what to do next. That's where you're like, with the guys, and you're playing games and you're sleeping and you're trying to do whatever you can do. And it's like, oh man, nobody knows how shitty this really is. It's not like it's like, oh, you guys got 6 hours, go and do what you want. You're like, hey, you guys, you're on standby, so as soon as we know something, we'll let you know. Can we go anywhere? No, you stay right here. You sit on this pack. Don't move. Okay. What are you going to do for 6 hours? However long it takes. But you're stuck there with these guys. And when the shit hits the fans, these are the only guys that are going to be there to help you. So I love that. And I think that's what continues to draw me closer to jiu-jitsu and the school and things like that, is like we're all doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. We're going about it in different ways, and we're not going about it, but mentally we're going about it different ways, like what our goals are, what we want to happen, things like that. But I see it a lot, and I do it a lot, is with people who are new or people that are just coming in. Like, I'm very standoffish.
Because those guys could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah, they may come and they may go, and it's like, I mean, it's kind of an asshole sense of way of thinking about it, but I was like, there's no reason for me to know you because you may not be here tomorrow.
Right.
I don't need to get to know you.
I understand that. I understand that. Until you're like until you're in some sort of like major instructor role as a martial arts instructor anyways, you're right.
Yeah.
It's like if you're a practitioner and then you see somebody come in the door, you're nice to them. Like, it's not like you're, go eat a dick or whatever. Yeah. Like, you're a very courteous person, but you're not going to just like find out everything about this person's life and get to know them and be their best friend. And then they didn't even make it past their 1 week trial. Yeah. So I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you first like get to the fleet and stuff, you're a boot. Like, you know nothing. You've done nothing. You are a white belt boot. And, until you get past that, and then like people actually know your name, like your name's on your chest the whole time. They're just like, "Hey, boot, come here."
30 guys turn their head and
yeah. So until like you get past that and actually have a name, I mean, it's like the old Fight Club. It's like his name is Robert Paulson. Like, he's an actual person now. He's not just part of the movement. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's kind of like a rite of passage, and I really like that. I've told you before, like, there's stuff like, hey, you don't rate that. Like, you don't rate to be in this room. You don't rate, and I think that structure is what I like, and I think that's what draws me more, like I said, to jiu-jitsu, because
it's because probably when you get in the beginning, doesn't matter what you've done in the past.
Right.
You're a turd.
Right.
So like, whether it be jiu-jitsu, or whether it be related to your service or something like that, it's like, doesn't matter if your mommy or daddy were poor. Doesn't matter if your mommy or daddy, had lots of money or that you had a Ivy League education. When you get on these mats, you're just like those other dudes that are on their first day.
Right.
So it doesn't matter where you came from or what your background. It's kind of like liberating to know that it's up to you to create the version of yourself that you want to be.
Right.
Is that kind of like the same?
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's the whole you got to crawl before you can walk kind of mentality. I mean, it's the same thing in the Marine Corps as it was here, and finding those paths, because it's like, hey, can you teach me, that position? Or you can teach me that Doris, and it's your second day. You're like, you don't even need to know this. It's the same way when you're a boot. Like, you don't need to know this right now. You need to focus on, whatever. So I like those parallels because then when you're a year in and it's like, hey, I understand the position. Can you show me the Doris? Yeah, cool. Here it is. Oh yeah, I've done that before. But when you're new, the basics or the fundamentals in jobs, in life, in military are essential. And you don't know that as an 18-year-old kid. You don't know that coming up when your parents are trying to tell you, hey, sweat the small stuff so the big stuff will be easy. You know, that's one thing I took away from one of my mentors is like, no, sweat the small stuff. Where you do that a lot in your teaching is like, no, fundamentally your hand needs to be here. Why? Because if you don't post, he's going to roll you, you know. And you're like, no, I'm good. I got the underhook. I'm not posting. And then you get rolled.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that is simple. That is just a task that you need to do. Put your hand down to prevent that. But coming in new, you don't know that.
Right.
And it's the same thing. I start to see, as the older I get, I start to see those parallels.
The parallels in like almost everything you do. Yeah, same.
So, and I think that's why I gravitate towards structure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that's military-wise. Like I said, it's very skewed because I felt kind of. I mean, now I know I was kind of like a number, but that's the federal government in general.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back on it, that's what the military brought me. That's what it taught me, and that's what I tend to put in the forefront of my life now. It's like, hey, sweat the small stuff.
Well, like when I was reading your intro, I've got a few friends that have, like when I was reading all the things that you've done, I've got some friends that have some, I don't know, accolades or just like done some of the similar things that you've done, but they're 63 years old.
I know.
So tell us a little bit about how you got out of the Corps and then kind of bridged into the Marshal Service, the Air Marshal Service.
Yeah, so I got injured on deployment. Ended up getting had metal in my body, and something very simple. I didn't think it was a big deal. Turned into a big deal. So I ended up getting septic, getting a bacterial infection in my bloodstream, and I noticed for several weeks and then months that something was off. Like I was sweating my bed out at night. Like I was very anemic. I was very pale. I had no appetite. All these now telltale signs of something's bad. And I would go to the corpsman and be like, "Hey man, something's weird." He'd take my temperature. He's like, "Hey man, you're running a slight fever." He's like, "But take some Motrin, drink a lot of water, try to get rest, all that kind of stuff." And I was like, "Okay." And for several weeks, like I was falling out of runs. I was like just having trouble in general, and couldn't track down anything. And as an 18-year-old kid, everybody's like, "Oh man, it's post-deployment. Like you're just coming off whatever. You've been eating MREs for forever. All that kind of stuff. Like just." And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, something's weird, but it's probably that. And then I go to medical one day, and I'm like, man, something is weird. And one of the corpsmen in there listened to me, and they actually had a doctor there, and he listened to me, and he was like, "You have a heart murmur." He's like, "You always had that?" I was like, "Nope, never heard of that." And he's like, "Okay." He's like, "Well, let's get you to the hospital. We'll do a chest X-ray." So they end up drawing a bunch of blood. That's how they found the infection. But what I got was bacterial endocarditis, and what that does is that attacks the lining of the heart, and where it solidified was on my aortic valve. So it just like putting something in acid, like it just starts eating away at. So your heart valve has leaflets that open and close. Every time your heart beats, it closes. It prevents blood from going back into your heart, and then it opens, shoots the blood out. So that's the pump. So it ate away at the leaflets to the point that I had what they call aortic regurg. So blood was coming back into my heart. It was causing me to be anemic. I wasn't getting enough oxygen in my blood. That's where I'm getting the pale. But bacterial endocarditis is very common in IV drug users because they're putting foreign metal in their body that is tainted or dirty, and then so they get that infection. So when I first went in, they were like, "Using drugs?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not using drugs." And So he's like, hey, man, you got a heart murmur. We'll do a chest x-ray. So they did a chest x-ray, and my heart is like 2 times the size of what it's supposed to be. And they're like, oh, shit.
Meaning it
had swollen.
It
expanded. It expanded.
Not grown.
Right.
Okay.
It expanded to compensate because I was still pushing myself as hard as I could. So go to the hospital. They do all that stuff. They're like, hey, yeah, well, we need to look at this. Send me back. And I actually had duty. So I was the NCO on duty at the barracks. And I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, yeah, we just need you to stay right where you are. And we're sending somebody over to relieve you. And I was like, okay. So they come over, they pick me up, and they're like, hey, man, you've got bacterial endocarditis. Test results came back. You got bacterial endocarditis. We need to get you to the hospital, talk to a surgeon. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? You know, and this whole part of my life was kind of a blur after that because it was more survivability after that. But I called my mom. Mom's a nurse. I was like, hey, I got something called bacterial endocarditis. She was just like hysterical. She was on a heart team for 10 years. She knows all this stuff. She's like, okay, well, I was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, at Courthouse Bay. And she was like, okay, we'll be there in 6 hours. They're like, all right. So they get in the car. They take me back to the hospital. They get me all lined up and listen to my heart and all this other stuff. And the guy comes in and explains that whole story of, hey, this is what's happened. You know, we need to get in there and take that valve out. And I was like, okay. Not knowing the severity of it at the time.
What is the length of time between what happened and them picking it up?
Probably 4 months.
Wow.
So
and this was not. I guess it was like a deterioration over time, or not deterioration. Like you were starting to see the symptoms grow over time.
Yeah. It was the level of severity was getting worse.
Okay.
And that's where I kind of get disassociated with military in general. Is it's kind of like that. That was the explanation I was getting was, hey, you know, here's Motrin, drink water, try to rest.
Yeah,
you know,
understood.
And so it's kind of like if they had caught it early and gave me a Z-Pack, I probably wouldn't have undergone anything that I've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
But because I was constantly at the time I was 20, and they were just like, "Oh man, you're fine. You're fine. Keep going. Push harder."
Right.
You know, and that's the Marine Corps mentality. I mean,
it's suck it up and push.
Right. And so that's what I did until there was somebody there that said, well, let me listen to him. Maybe he's got, I was complaining like upper respiratory, like that kind of stuff. I had a dry cough, you know. And then he was like, well, let me listen to your lungs. Maybe you got pneumonia or something. And then that's when they heard the murmur. So fast forward, you know, my parents get there. Actually, really strange. I had one of my battle buddy having to stay with me in the hospital, and just to report back to my chain of command what was going on. So then I remember being in the hospital and my parents getting there, and like we're trying to track down. Okay, what are we gonna do? You know, chain of command is trying to figure out what we're gonna do with me because there's no surgeon. I've got to go see somebody for this specific surgery. Luckily, I got very lucky. My mom had made probably 100 phone calls for me, trying to get them to put me on leave so her team could do the surgery. And they were like, nah, I had to be on 6 weeks of IV antibiotics. And so what they were going to do is have me drive from my barracks to medical every day and then give me IV antibiotics. Because what they did is they actually put a line in my arm. So they put a PICC line.
PICC line, yeah.
And it ran all the way up here And then they just plug me in, boom, give my antibiotic. So yeah, my mom was like, no, he can't. What happens if he's in his barracks alone and he dies? Like, nobody's there to help him. So I got very lucky in the fact that I had a cousin who was a colonel in the Marine Corps at the Pentagon, and she called him and was like, hey, this is what's going on. So the day that they decided that I was going to be put on convalescent leave, we had to drive from I was in Wilmington, North Carolina at the hospital, just south of Camp Lejeune. And I had to drive from there to Knoxville to go get my antibiotics and stuff. But yeah, I remember my CO and my first sergeant walking into my hospital room and, like, them shooting shit with me. And, like, my parents are sitting there and, like, trying to introduce them while I'm in the bed. And I'm, like, fucking bad off, really pale, all that kind of stuff. And my first sergeant T comes over and he bends down next to me. And, like, I hadn't shaved in, like, 3 or 4 days. He bends down next to me and he's like, are you fucking dead? I'm like, no, first sergeant. He said, then you get up and you shave that shit off your face. And I was like, all right. So I got out of bed. I've got my little rolly thing, and I'm stumbling trying to get to the bathroom. I was like, what? You got to go to the bathroom? What's going on? And I'm like, no, I'll just be a minute. And I came back out, clean shaved and stuff like that. And I like shit like that. And but that was the level of detail that the Marine Corps kind of instills.
That's badass.
That's where I get back to, like, the fundamentals. Like, you're gonna worry about your hygiene and your personal appearance.
All of those little things add up.
Right. So,
that's cool.
But yeah, I went to Knoxville, had open heart surgery, had a double valve replacement. So I took my aortic valve out, replaced it with my own pulmonic valve, and then put a cadaver valve in the aortic spot. So kind of like a switcheroo. And then that kind of ended my Marine Corps career. So I was medically retired. And then after that was the VA, and I dealt with them for forever now. So.
Mm-hmm. So you were a Marine, and then you weren't. That's got to be probably, yeah, but almost probably like it's not real.
Yeah.
Like you were just having to shave your fucking face because your sergeant was telling you to uphold your appearance. You have an operation, and then you probably find out not long after that, thanks for your service.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, it was strange because I got put on convalescent leave, so I had 6 weeks of IV antibiotics, which my mom administered from home.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back to my parents' house, and she would get me up every day, put my medicine in there and stuff. And I actually had to check into a reserve unit in Knoxville. So I would call every morning, like, hey, this is Corporal Aloi, just checking in. They'd be like, all right, got you. That was it. And so I was very much detached from the day-to-day. I had, guys texting me and all that other stuff, and that's the way I kept on what was going on. But yeah, it was very much that detachment of, like, okay, now I'm battling this.
So you basically found out that you were no longer a Marine?
Well, I was still in the Marine Corps up until I had surgery.
Right.
And then they were kind of like waiting for the VA docs to either clear me or cut me.
Okay.
So my personal docs cleared me. They're like, he's good to go, and then the VA docs, because I was on my cardiologist and everything else was talking to the VA cardiologist, and he was like, hey, VA cardiologist, like, hey, he's got to be on these medicines. He's got to be lifelong, these medicines. And my doctor's like, no, I mean, at some point he can come off of them, But my heart was so deteriorated strength-wise that they had me on medicines, for an 80-year-old man.
Right. That's what I was about to bring up is so like when you found out that they said, nah, he can't be a Marine anymore.
Yeah.
This was happening before you had fully recovered.
Yeah. So I didn't even get a chance.
So you could you run a quarter mile hard or no?
At the time, no.
That's what I mean. So like, it's like, it was kind of like a blow after blow after blow.
Yeah.
You find out this too while you're down here, not while you're up here. Not like you did a full recovery, Corporal Aloi reporting for duty, and they're like, nah. And you're like, all right, I'm a strapping young beefcake of a man that you are, and I'll just go find something else to do. That wasn't how it happened.
Yeah.
It was like kicking you while you were down, like a peg, more like that.
Yeah, definitely. And it was gut-wrenching because that's all I've ever wanted to do.
Right.
And now I'm out in 3 years, 7 months. So, it was one of those soul-searching things where I was like, what the fuck do I do now? What do I do?
So what did you do?
Didn't want to do anything other than this. This was going to be my career.
Right.
And I had to go to cardiac rehab, which everybody was 80 plus in there, and like you get on the little hand bike and you do that kind of stuff. Isaac's laughing, but he had to do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not laughing, by the way.
I was a kid, so I was like 14 or 13 when I was doing mine. So like, yeah, I've been the one like looking around and everybody in there looks like death.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Like,
so those are your peers now.
Yeah, I know. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
And I go to cardiac rehab, and I did that, and but thing that people don't understand about open heart surgery is like you can go in and be a fucking ox. You can go in and be, I run 10 miles a day. I'm this type of person, and you come out of there, and you are a vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something so personal about having your chest cracked open. And I can't describe it. I can try to relate to other surgeries that people have, but it's not like, hey, I just had my MCL repaired. Like there's something so personal about somebody working on your heart, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Like everybody knows, like, hey, you kill the heart, you kill the person. And I've thought about this for years now, like somebody actually touching your heart. Like, yes, that's a term, like, oh, man, they touched my heart. No, something actually touching your heart, like there's something psychologically that happens where you can be the hardest hard ass in the world, and you are like jelly. You're so vulnerable after that because you know how close you are to death. So it was very difficult for me as this hard-charging 20-year-old Marine to be humbled as low as I was humbled. Because from that point on, I was going to the VA. I had anxiety out the ass, like to the point, like if my heart rate went up, I was like, oh God, something's wrong in here, and it would get my head spinning, like, do I need to go to the ER? Is it, something like that? And then to the point, like, I'd be out in public having a meal, and I would feel like I was going to die. Nobody would know what was actually wrong with me. I couldn't tell somebody because I'm dying that, hey, I have heart trouble, And that was spit at me for years, like, you have heart trouble. No, I mean, I had a problem that was fixed. I know that now. But at the time coming up, and this is through my 20s, time coming up, I didn't understand it. And no one else understood it, and no one else is ever going to understand it, was my mentality. You don't know what it's like to be 20 years old in a hospital bed, and people are coming in, are you comfortable with dying? Fuck, are you telling me I'm dying? Like, and then having to come to that realization where it's not like, hey, I just got in a car accident. It's like, no, this is dying, and you've got to figure out a way to be okay with that. And then to come out of that, and I'm with all these 80-year-old people, and the times that I've heard these people say, well, you're too young for this. Man, if I had a dime for every time somebody said that. So psychologically, the shit that I went through in the Marine Corps was nothing compared to the shit I went through post Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I mean, that's kind of my soapbox of how things. So VA was throwing drugs at me like, hey man, you know, here you're going to be on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicine. If you feel like you're having a panic attack, here's Ativan, you know, but you're going to be on Prozac, and you take that, and then if you have a panic attack, here's Ativan. Hey, you need help sleeping? Cool, here's Ambien, you know. And so I ran through that at, you know, 21. But all that being said, like, if I could go back and do it all over again, you know, obviously it would be a different story.
That like hits me in the gut, like what you just talked about, like with the pills. That's like something that always hits me when I know that most doctors probably join to help people. And I know that some people do need lots of medication, especially older people, and their body is just breaking down. But when I hear somebody tell somebody like you, even though like you probably needed some of the medicines, that they're like trying to just push. I hate hearing that, dude. Makes me sick to my stomach.
The worst part was like nobody listened to me or like sat down and was like,
that's it.
What's going on with you?
That's it.
And
that's what
I could
hurts.
say something as simple as like, I just have trouble sleeping. Cool, here's 10 milligrams of whatever. And it wasn't like, we're going to start you low and then figure out what you need. It was just like, here, take this. Let me know how it helps.
Because your story is not like the only one like that.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. And you know, like we've talked about this in depth of like your weight cut in London. Is it London?
Yeah.
When you so that
Manchester.
Yeah. That vulnerability that you felt, like your body's shutting down, you know, and there's not shit you can do. And you know, I mean, like you have a glimpse of like how that felt.
When you don't think, you're about to die.
Yeah.
It's like, but I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
When there's a certain sense of like calmness with my situation because I was in control of it. But I feel like with your situation, there was more of a vulnerability to it because you really weren't in control.
Yeah.
All I had to do was
eat something,
start taking some fluids.
Yeah.
It was that easy. Go to a hospital, get pumped with probably 12 to 15 bags of IV fluid, you know, save my kidneys from failing, save myself from going into cardiac arrest, and it would have been that easy.
Yeah.
But I was nope. So like when the things were happening to me and I was like, I'm about to die. But I knew it. So fucking what? I said I was going to make this weight. I signed the dotted line. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
But with you didn't have that sense of control. So there's a big difference there, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, how'd you cross over from this point? How did you get back to the recovery path and serving our country by flying in the air? How'd you get that?
So I slowly but surely got back on my feet and was, you know, exercising and doing that kind of thing. It started out really slow. It started out incredibly slow. Like, hey, we're going to walk to the stop sign today.
Right.
You know, and I would get about halfway and I'd be like, oh, man, I'm not going to make it, you know. So it started out very slow, but as I started to get my feet underneath me and I started to kind of gain control of my body again, because my mind was kicking my ass. It was like, no, you can't go out today. You go out today, you're going to die.
Yeah.
You know, or I'd be riding in the car with my mom, and I'd be like, we got to go home. She'd be like, no, you wanted to come eat lunch. Like, you better get that shit to go. We got to go home now. And I'd be like irate. So we'd go home, and I'd, you know, decompress on the couch and stuff like that. Like, that's the extent of how bad my anxiety was.
So back to the Marine Corps, like you were talking about, like the body can't go where the mind's never been. You had become like the poster child for that in a way, but now you're in a position where your mind wasn't strong, therefore your body couldn't become strong.
Right.
Yeah.
I was so beat down mentally after my career was shot. And I can only imagine like how anybody else feels when they're like, we draw parallels a lot with like martial artists. Like, this is my life's work, day in and day out, and you go in and you get your leg blown out, like and now you're done. You're never going to get another opportunity like you had. You're at the biggest stage in the world, and that's how I can only imagine how they feel. But it's kind of along the same lines. Like, since I was a kid, this is all I ever wanted to do.
Right.
So I enrolled in community college, taking a couple classes. And Mom was like, this will get you outside. You don't have to be there all day. This class is 55 minutes. You go in 3 times a week. Cool. And I started doing that, and I started to gain that confidence slowly back. And there were times when I was in class with, 10 or 12 people, and I would get, my anxiety would build up. She's like, if your anxiety builds up, just leave. You don't have to be there. Nobody's keeping you here. And I still do that today. Like, I want an exit. If I give myself an exit, then I feel comfortable staying. But if I don't have an exit, then I get like really anxious. So that was kind of like my my first little work with understanding this and trying to control it. It's like, yeah, man, always give yourself an exit. And so having that in my bag really helped me get back out. Because it'd be like if a bunch of friends went to dinner or something, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to go. And I just pick up and leave, So started enrolling community college, then finished a year there, finished the semester, I should say. And then I decided I was well enough, I'm going to move away from home again and go to Middle Tennessee State University. My buddy was there, best friend in the world, got me through a lot of shit. He career law enforcement. That's what he always wanted to do. That's what we went to school to do. So we both enrolled criminal justice majors, both minored in history. But that's what we were going to do. And so we went there, and like he knew ins and outs. He's been with me in the hospital at nights, stuff like that. So he knew, and it was nice to have like that battle buddy that understands like, hey, Joe's on a different level, on a different plane, and so he can kind of follow along with me, and like in case something happens, he's there. So went there, graduated or floated through, graduated.
College boy.
Yeah, did the college life thing.
College boy.
Yeah. Successful pro drinker.
All right.
Marine Corps taught me anything. It was how to drink. But yeah, and I was struggling to find a job. This was end of 2008, 2009. Struggling to find a job. So here's what's funny is I was like, hey, you know what? I can re-enlist. And so I go to the recruiters and I'm like, I'm not going to the Marine Corps because there's so much more money and so many other jobs out there than the Marine Corps. So let's go see what the Air Force is talking about. So now living in Air Force town, it's kind of funny to me. Yeah. But I go to the Air Force recruiter and I'm like, hey, man, I want to join up. I said, I'm a college grad. I want to go officer. I got prior service experience, all this other stuff. And he was like, oh, man, that's great.
Wow,
that's great.
what a resume.
Yeah. So he's like, all right, well, yeah, what we can do is we can put a package together. And we'll send it off, and then, we'll be ready to go. And I was like, okay. Well, what's the turnaround time on that? And he's like, oh, right now about 18 months. I'm like, nah, bro, I'm ready to go today. Like, what do you need me to do? You need me to take a physical? I mean, whatever. And he's like, no, it's not how it works over here. So I was like, shit, all right. So I just walked down the line. I went to the Navy recruiter. sure, I'm not going Army. I didn't go in the Army office. Fuck Army.
Right.
No offense.
I got you.
But I went to the Navy Navy recruiter, and I was like, hey, man, I want to join up. I'm a re-enlist, and I want to go to OCS. I want to do all that. Officers Candidate School. I want to do it all. And he's like, cool. The guy you need to talk to isn't here. And he's like, but he'll call you. I'm like, all right. So I just popped my head in the Marine Corps recruiter's office. And I was like, hey, there's a gunny in there. I said, hey, gunny, I was, looking to get back in. I want to go officer, all that other stuff. He's like, okay. He's like, who were you last with? And I was like, 2-6 Marines. He's like, you know where they're at now? And I was like, I think they're in CACs, pre-deployment stuff. And he's like, okay. He's like, you got your PT gear with you? And I was like, no, not with me. He's like, well, can you run home and get it? And I was like, yeah. I was like, what do you think the turnaround would be? He got on the computer, and he said, you take a PT test today. This was on a Monday or Tuesday. He's like, take a PT test today. He's like, I can have you back in Thursday. And I'm like, whoa.
U.S. Navy. I hear you.
That was the Marine Corps.
Oh, that was the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, let me rethink this, and so anyway, starting to look around. I
Did the Navy guy ever call you back?
never called me back. So no biggie. But I start looking around. I have a bunch of friends in law enforcement, a bunch of friends that are cops and federal law enforcement, stuff like that. So for the last probably 8 months before I graduated, I was just slinging applications. I went through a bunch of hiring process, Secret Service. I wanted to go federal. Knew I wanted to go federal. Went through Border Patrol, DEA, FBI, ATF, and then the Marshals. So during this time, I was working as a CI and a reserve officer, shadowing in Clarksville, Tennessee. So they finally going to put me through my post certification, police officers certification in Tennessee, and everything else, and getting geared up to go to the academy, and then the Marshals called me. And they offered me a job, and I actually put in for Washington, D.C. field office. And they call me and they say, hey, do you want to go to Atlanta? And I was like, sure. I felt like if I put in D.C., it would be the easiest way in because nobody wants to go to D.C. So they called me and offered me Atlanta. I said, sure, I'll take it. And so I started the hiring process for them. Went down, did.
So when you're going in for the hiring process, because U.S. Marshal Service is DOJ and Air Marshal Service is DHS.
Right.
So when you're doing the initial process, do you already know the difference between those two, or do they kind of funnel you into one versus the other?
They funnel you.
Okay.
So the guys that are actually doing the hiring process are marshals already.
Okay.
And so you are going directly to the field office and doing all that kind of stuff. So the way federal law enforcement, way most law enforcement works is you go in and you take an initial test. And whether that be Secret Service test, whoever law enforcement test, they have specific tests for their position. So you go in and take it. It's like taking the ACT. There's mechanical reasoning. There's all that different aspects. There's math. There's word comprehension. There's all that stuff. So about usually on average 3 or 4 hour test. So you go in and it's local. You go to your community college or whatever. It's on a computer. You log in, boom, you take your test, and you wait for your results. If you test well enough, you get moved on to the next portion. And there's like fucking 8 portions to every law enforcement.
Yuck.
So you go in, you test. Next, you're going and you're doing a panel interview. And they go and you do your panel interview. If they like you, hey, now we're going to do a PT test. And you pass your PT test, hey, now we're going to do a physical. And they're getting, further and further in the process. So I had 4 processes running at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I was so freaking worried that my heart was going to keep me out of it that I explained everything to everybody that I came across. They're probably tired of hearing about it, and they were like, "Yo, you're good," So I had a letter from doctors and everything else. But so going through that whole process from the start date to the hire date was like 14 months.
Wow.
And you're just kind of like riding the wave, just trying to figure out what the next move is. But one thing that really drew me to it is like this was 2009. They had like 40,000 applicants for the position nationwide. And you could go on USA Jobs and, apply and all that other stuff. So they had 40,000 applicants. And so when I went to actually do my panel interview, there was like 20 of us at the field office. So you show up, you got to put a lanyard on. Somebody's there handling you the whole time. And we go in, and everybody's in suit and tie. Got to be in suit and tie. And there's one guy that shows up, and he's in a shirt and tie, no suit, no jacket. And so the ASAC, or the Assistant Special Agent in charge, he comes down and greets us and like, hey, you guys are going to be going through your panel, blah, blah, blah. So he looks over, and this guy's got his jacket, no jacket on. And so he walks over to him. He's like, hey, man, what's your name? And he told him, he's like, you got your jacket? He's like, nah, I wear a shirt and tie. I didn't bring a jacket. He's like, all right, man, hey, appreciate you coming. Here's the door. And walked him out. He said, guys, this is a professional agency. You don't have a shooting jacket, you're not going to be here. And we were all like, whoa. So that's probably like 6 months that he went through that process to get to that point. And you show up and leave your fucking jacket at home.
So let me ask you something. When you were in your truck about to walk in, were you like, jacket, no jacket, maybe I'll just leave it behind?
Nah, I didn't do anything. No. I was like, I'm wearing a suit.
Okay.
I knew from mentors and guys like that I had to have a suit. And it's funny, even now, as I started to get out of the Marshal Service, I went through a couple hiring processes, GBI, stuff like that. And I showed up to take their written exam in a suit. And I go, and the people that are walking in, they're in like freaking sweats and like the T-shirts and like unkept, ungroomed and stuff like that. And I walked in a suit, and like people are looking at me. I'm like, oh, dude, what's he doing? And when he got a suit on, people are in like pajama pants and like, I'm like, you realize what you're testing for. And so, like that's something I took away from the Marine Corps. That's something that I continue. Like your first appearance is all you ever get. So if you want people to reciprocate that, like showing up and making that first impression, like, hey, cut your freaking hair. Hey, put on something that's clean. Tie your shoes, something like that. Like those are little things that people remember.
Corporal, shave that shit off your face.
That was it right there. Like, oh man, when I started getting like tattoos and stuff like that, my grandfather, 26 years in the Marine Corps, freaking been at the White House for 8 years of his career, Marine Corps drum major, like big deal. I started getting tattoos and then grew my hair out. After I got out, I grew my hair out, grew a beard, and he was like, the fuck are you doing? He tells me every time I see him now, he's like, I'll still pay to get your tattoos removed. He'll pay for it. He's like, no questions asked. You just tell me you want them gone, and I'll get them gone.
Don't remove those.
Oh, I'm not taking them. But, like, that's the level of what I came up from.
Right, that professional appearance, like you said, first impressions. So, like, you go through all the stuff, and then did you have a choice to go, like, through the, like, standard marshals or the air marshals, or did they kind of say this is where we need you, and that's, like, where you... So, when you went through... I don't know what the term is, like the initial training, like the boot camp, but for what do they call this?
It's just like your I don't remember what they call it.
Like I've watched the guys at FLETC run through it.
Same thing.
And I've seen the guys, some people didn't deserve or didn't need to be there.
Right.
I don't want to say deserve. They didn't need to be there. Falling up short in some basic physical qualifications and and unable to handle stress with the pepper spray or the sound of the firearm going off. When you went and did this type of thing, cakewalk for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did not have trouble because, like I said, it's very paramilitary.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to do so. It's funny because we go to the initial phase of your training is Artesia, New Mexico, and it's where Border Patrol trains. It's where BOP. It's where bunch of agencies train at. So we go there. Border Patrol is probably the biggest paramilitary style of training. So it was funny to watch, like, the new recruits get off the bus and, like, there's guys there screaming out, "Get your shit together," you know, just like you see on any recruiter's video and stuff like that. But we were kind of like diddy bopping around, like, "Hey, yeah, this is nice," and everybody wears different color uniforms so you can identify, like, that's BOP, that's marshals, stuff like that. So emotionally, I had a lot of difficulties to overcome. One, because I was worried, hey, is my heart gonna hold up
to this?
We're running, you're running a gun and you're training, you're in the classroom all day, you're doing defensive tactics, you're fighting red man, all that kind of stuff.
I got to watch some of the border patrol specifically do some defensive tactics at FLETC as well.
Yeah,
and it was really cool.
Yeah,
and it's like just like you were talking about, like, kind of paramilitary, dude. It's just like the military because there's no one type of person. I saw dudes that were 6'6" with no athletic talent.
Yeah,
I saw little women 5'2" who were beasts. I saw dudes 6'2", 230 who were savages. Like, there was every single type of person running through, even within the federal law enforcement realm. It's pretty cool to see that level of diversity.
Yeah. And you, like you said, there are people there that have no business being there. We saw that, and it was very apparent. Actually, I had one of my best friends leave. So you go through 2 phases of training, and it's about our level of training is pretty high. Our firearms training is the highest in federal law enforcement.
Man, that's what you were telling me.
Highest pistol qualification standard across the board. But the level of training, there's, and I don't mean to sound bad, but there is a persona and an image that the federal government likes to present. And it's, it's different skin types, it's different genders, so if you have a person who is a black female, or you have somebody who fits that persona, that has no business being there. Like, hey, they failed to run. Okay, we're going to remediate. Whereas, like, in the military, like, you fail that run, or that's what I don't like about the standards, is they're like, they're manipulable. So you see that and you're like, okay, well, they didn't make it. And it's not, it's difficult because of the realm that we work in. In the military, I may have to count on you for my life.
For your life.
Same thing in federal law enforcement. I may have to count on you for my life. And if you fell out of that run that says, hey, you've got to run this 1.5 miles in under 12 minutes, and you're running 15, you're running 18 minutes, and they're like, oh, we can't, she's good, or he's good, that's wrong to me. So one of my good friends, he was a TAC P instructor, real hard charger. He got in there and he ended up,
bless our TAC Ps.
He had it out with one of the instructors, because he's like, no, you can't just keep you're creating problems. You can't just keep pushing these people through. And he ended up walking away and going back and being a TAC P instructor. But he knew, just like we all knew, that you can't push people in a position just because of whatever, of differences. You need this, all colors, all shapes, all sizes mentality. Yeah, you can have that at the front, but you can't have that when it's people's lives on the line.
I got you.
If you can't push yourself physically, you're never going to make it. So you saw that in federal law enforcement, and it was very apparent.
With the pistol qualification specifically, did you learn a lot?
Yeah. I was more inundated. When I left the academy, I had shot over 40,000 rounds, just me.
Whoa.
And that's over a 5-month period. So everybody gets that level, and you keep a log of all the rounds that come out of the weapon. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Was that your favorite part of the training?
Yeah. It was cool. I really gravitated towards defensive tactics and stuff like that. I really enjoyed, fighting a red man. And for people that don't know, a red man is a guy. He's in an all red suit.
It's a defensive suit, yeah. I mean, he's a big dummy for you, and he doesn't quite have all the mobility, but he's fully padded, and you can wreck him.
You can go as hard as you want.
Yeah.
But I had so Artesia, FLETC training, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, is very generic. It's like, hey, this is how you handcuff people, and it's like these basic skills, these basic tactics are like, okay, you're gonna get your handcuffs set up, and then you're looking at them. You got to make sure that they're lined up. Okay, he's already in a defensive position. Like you're gonna walk up, you're gonna put the handcuffs on, and that's how it's gonna be. Anybody who's ever put handcuffs on anybody knows that that's not how it plays out. But you've got to teach it at that level. So it was very like Mickey Mouse, Barney style for everybody to be able to get through and get a baseline.
The baseline.
And then once you go to secondary training, it's very, now this is our job. This is how you put handcuffs on somebody in a seat. This is how, you fight from the aisle of a plane.
You're getting in a phone booth because in a combatives or defensive tactics realm inside of a fuselage is going to be completely different than fighting in the middle of a football field.
Right. And now you're learning to shoot on an unstable platform. Mm-hmm. So you got this plane that's rocking, and you've got to shoot somebody that's 4 rows deep.
Incredible.
That is, stuff like that. So that's where I really, really enjoyed that portion of the training. We had an instructor who ran all the combatives portion of it. His name was Urso.
Michael Urso.
Yeah, he's a UFC judge. He big time in the wrestling community up in the Northeast. For combatives, you couldn't get any better.
Yeah. One of the creators of the McMat program.
Yeah, the Marine Corps Martial Arts program.
Yeah.
So it was cool going through with him, and then once you get to that level of the second portion of the training, it's like more job oriented. So okay, this is hey, we've got a threat. We need, and it's the marshals are very much mission oriented. The mission is most important. The mission is most important.
You've probably found it pretty easy to get on board with that with your prior military service.
Yeah, it was an easy transition, and most of the guys that I worked with were prior military or local law enforcement.
Did you find that you connected with those specific individuals that did have that military or law enforcement background prior to the marshal service versus somebody that came from just a real good school in a civilian sector?
Yeah.
Because you guys are speaking the same language, you already kind of
have an understanding.
Yeah.
And
it's always, I think that's always like that when you find out somebody's been through similar or the same things that you've been through. You immediately, okay, he's on the up and up, and then you guys form some type of bond, even if it's not quite a friendship. You're like, all right, I'm going to be with this guy.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. You create that bond,
right?
And that they've been in the shit, like. Man, we're going to do this,
that shared suffering we were talking about.
This 20-mile hump with a 60-pound pack. Like,
right.
They've all been there. So you kind of connect in that regard with those guys. And even the ones that didn't come from that, there's a strong connection because you're hiding in the general public. And as a marshal, you're hiding in the general public. Waiting for threats to present themselves. So you'll be on a plane, on a 777 or a 747 with 230 people, and you've got 6 guys that you're counting on, or you got 4 guys, or you got 1 other guy. So it's you form close bonds really quickly because you'll go in and you have a threat on the plane. The federal government they like to surveil. I mean, we all know that, but we are that frontline surveillance, and people that are on the no-fly list fly all the time. But it gives us a good viewpoint of, hey, why are they traveling? Who are they talking to? Where are they going? You know, so we can start to draw those connections and connect those dots to, okay, I
think that's important that you mentioned that, because a lot of people probably think that air marshals, their main thing is they just sit on the, they are non-uniformed and they just sit on the plane with a gun, and they're there just in case something pops off. But for you to be able to tell the listeners that no, we're not there for the safety of these random passengers on a random flight. We're on that flight for a reason.
Right.
And that's cool. It lets other people that might be out there, young people who didn't know that aspect of the air marshal, that you're doing a little bit of spook stuff too. You know, which is cool. Being able to use your head and not just, I'm just there with the gun.
Yeah. And you'll I mean, on any of the stuff, you'll get a briefing, and you'll be like, hey, this is who's on the plane today. Or, hey, the president is going to be in Detroit. And you always think, you're like, why am I going to Detroit? And that's what you think. Like, hey, why am I going to Detroit today? Oh, the president's speaking, so we don't want somebody to use this, plane as a missile. So that's where the threats come down from whoever's giving them out. That's our main goal, is the safety of the traveling public. There's a lot of things that people, like you said, that people look at and they're like, oh man, they just sit there and they wait for something to happen. Yeah. But we also have knowledge that you don't have, that the reason we're on the plane is like, hey, this guy's
we shouldn't have.
right. This guy is funneling money to Hezbollah. So we're watching him. We don't, if something happens and he's on the plane, he's the target, or generally anybody else that's on a no-fly list, we cover. We write our report. We work jointly with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, with the FBI. We cover everything on the plane, in the airport, outside the airport, and then as soon as they leave the AOA, the Airport Operation Area, that's the FBI's.
So I got a question for you. Not really, kind of backtracking just a little bit. When you probably sure it was an emotional, proud moment for the males that were prior Marine Corps when you graduated your Marine Corps boot camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you probably felt some level of pride too.
Oh yeah.
But I'm guessing that the school at the academy for the Air Marshals probably a little longer and probably more in depth mentally, at least academically, with papers and briefings and stuff. What did you feel more? More pride in? Did you feel more pride in one versus the other, and why?
Marine Corps, definitely.
Okay.
100%.
Was it more difficult?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It is jam-packed. Boot camp is 13 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It is jam-packed with there's so much that goes into it. And like I said before, Marine Corps is such a small group of people that you're earning what we call equal globe and anchor. That's the Marine Corps symbol. And you earn that EGA. And when you get presented that, because you're not allowed to wear that,
mm-hmm.
you don't rate to wear that until you graduate boot camp. So if you make it to graduation and they hand you that equal globe and anchor, it's like, this is the thing that I'm never giving up.
What about the Air Marshal Academy? When you graduate, do you just get a badge and that's it?
You get a badge, you take a picture,
Okay.
all that other stuff, and then
do you get golden wings or anything like that? No? Okay.
No. And it's cool. I mean, you get a badge. They give you get a badge. You take your picture. You walk over and get your gun.
What kind of gun?
SIG 229 and 357 SIG.
357.
Yeah, 357.
They're
SIG.
not worried about that going through 6 people.
Oh, it will.
I know. That's what I'm
100%,
asking.
yeah.
Like, that wasn't a very well thought out, or they just got
again,
the best bid, or how'd that
federal
work?
government, and
Okay.
somebody's getting something from somebody,
Hey, that's what our guy, I want to call him Bill because every old timer in Texas looks like a Bill. But that guy that just popped off the dude in the church, that headshot from like 45 feet away.
Yeah.
He had a 229
Yeah.
in 357.
Yeah. Same gun.
Yeah.
Actually, we all passed that around after that happened and stuff.
Right. Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, so, and they switch a lot of times, but we've had, we're getting ready to switch to Glock 19, 9 mil. Okay. I think that's kind of standard federal law enforcement round now. But yeah, 357 SIG, magazines, baton, handcuffs, zip cuffs, all kinds of stuff we carried.
The zip cuffs.
And you got it's so different because you're transitioning internationally with all your equipment and everything else. So there's a lot more red tape that we have to jump through to be able to carry guns in foreign countries, all that kind of stuff. So,
so once you got in the air, what was life like? When you're on the road, in the air, did you dig it?
It was cool. It was my first. And granted, I joined the Air Marshals. I was 23 going through the academy. Finished college, all that kind of stuff. 24, I was actively flying, covering flights. And so at that age, at 24, I always thought I was like, man, I'm grown. I understand and stuff like that. And now looking back, I'm 33. Looking back, I was like, I was just a dumb kid. Like, you're giving me all this responsibility, and things I would do differently and change. But like, I wouldn't trade the experiences for the world, because at 20, that's what I was doing, and I literally flew to every 50 states, almost every continent. Haven't been to Antarctica. There's several places I haven't been, but 9 times out of 10, if there's an international airport that can land a plane that will hold an international plane, I've been there. So my wife got me a board of the map of the United States or the world, and like I just keep putting pins in it, putting pins in it of all the places I've been. So that experience was great. Traveling on the road and traveling through different time zones and being constantly gone is a young man's game. Like it's.
I think that's important to bring up. You probably like maybe you can speak on like how your like circadian rhythm and your sleep patterns and all that stuff kind of like probably gets out of whack and gets worse the older that you get with that type of position.
Oh yeah, and then your health deteriorating because you're constantly like, hey, I need to eat. What do I have available to me? Okay, there's a McDonald's in this terminal. You can walk down there and get something, or,
What about radiation being exposed to?
That is a big thing that's coming up now. You see it a lot with pilots, and for people that don't know, like you're flying in this aluminum tube, but you're actually closer to the sun, so you're getting more not UV rays, but what am I trying to say? X-rays, X-ray exposure or radiation exposure. So spending all that time in the air, we're having guys now that are coming down with cancer really quick and passing away. And I know several guys that have died in the last probably 5 years of cancer. And so they're starting to investigate that. But again, that's another thing with the federal government. Like, we need these flights covered. We need asses in the seats. We need this guy watched. So it's mission first. And, like, we have an old joke, stick with it. He'd be like, hey, man, the airport's on fire. The plane's flying with one wing, and, what do you want me to do? And you call D.C., and they're like, I stick with it. Like, nah, bro. I mean, like, and there'll be stuff like, hey, this guy's traveling to Mumbai. We need him covered. Okay. Hey, the plane's broke. It's not going to go. Flight's canceled. All right. we got this guy. He's moving to, Liberia, or he's moving to wherever. All right, we're going to put you on that plane. So your whole mission is scrubbed, and then you're picking up this guy. And, so it's controlled chaos. So it'd be like today I fly Atlanta to D.C., and then I come back. Tomorrow I'm going to Rome. And then the next day from Rome, I'll be there 24 hours, and then I'm coming back. And then I land, and then that day, the day you come back, hey, I'm going to L.A. So people don't understand. It's like
were you married at this point?
No.
No. So if we have like listeners that are thinking about, that federal law enforcement realm, what is the family dynamic life for most of these guys that are in the air? Do they have like an equal divorce rate to the military?
Yes.
70, 80%? Yeah,
it is not it's not uncommon for guys to be on their second wives, third wives. It's very, very common. It's mentally, physically, emotionally draining because you are mission oriented, but you are married to the job.
So it's very much like you were saying, like I'm sure the Marine Corps, that's a young man's game, or woman, and probably the same thing with the Air Marshal Service.
It is. There's guys that have been doing this that came on board, that left the military, that been doing this since 2002. Mm-hmm. Air Marshals have been around since the 60s. Mm-hmm. And before 9/11 is when you saw the inundation of more and more air marshals. We need more people in the seats. We need more flights covered.
Right.
We got to keep, all these people safe. So you started seeing this inundation of more and more people. So that's where the structure of Department of Homeland Security took over. They're like, hey, okay, we're going to run it. So the MOC, or Mission Operations Command, where they dictate where you're going, why you're going, all that other stuff. They just started ramping everything up. Like, hey, we got to cover this guy and this guy and this guy, and this flight needs to be covered because this guy's on the ground. So divorce rate is incredibly high because, like I said, you can be, hey, I'm going to Lagos today, and then it's scrubbed. Okay. So now I'm going to send you to Dubai. And they can call you at home and be like, hey, we need you, and you've got to be within an hour of the airport. Be like, hey, I don't have anything going on today. I'm going to take my kids and get ice cream, and we're going to
You thought you were going to have an R&R day.
And they're like, hey, we need you. You're going to Seattle. And what time's the flight leave? It's 1 o'clock now. It leaves at 3. Hey, guys, I got to go. And you just pick up and go. So that's where you get a lot of issues, and then living out of suitcase.
Yeah.
You've got to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. It sounds very exciting, but if your mind's not in it and you're thinking about those at home, it probably creates a strain and probably makes you not very effective at your job too.
Yeah. It's different now because now there's Wi-Fi on the planes, so you can text,
right,
significant others and stuff. When I first came on, that was a theory. And it makes me sound old, but it's like, yeah, it's like the old phones in the back. Like, I'm on a plane talking to you on the phone.
Would you say that you're a Gen 1 Air Marshal?
No. I'm not a Gen 1. Those guys were there 10 years before I was there. But it was one of those things, and now it's like very common. So, like, if there's a problem at home, like, you can text. When I was flying, it was like, hey, that phone goes off, boom. And we had ways of communicating on the plane with each other with electronics, mm-hmm. but you couldn't talk to the ground.
Well, how did your service in the air come to an end? What happened there?
Ended up having to have another heart surgery. So the procedure that I had done, I had about 60% of the people that have the procedure have what they call aortic root dilation, where the valve is actually causing pressure and it's expanding the root. So it can lead to some problems and stuff like that. So they were watching. I had to, had a yearly physical, and they would go in and do an echo and like look at my heart and all that other stuff. And they monitored, and then they were like, "Hey, it's dilating." I remember I was on a flight, and I landed, and I was getting ready to go somewhere else, and the doctor's office called me, and it was my cardiologist nurse, and she was like, yeah, she's like, hey, we need you to come in. We got, your root's dilated, and we're gonna have to do surgery. And I'm like, my heart sank. I was just like right back to where I was before. And I was like, so is this something like you guys can, like, I don't need surgery, like you can fix without it? Like, oh, no, we're going to crack you open. You're going to go back in. And at this point, my now wife, I called her, and I was just like, I was just crying. And I was like, it's over. It's over. And I called my mom, same thing. She's like, well, let's, my mom's always, let's not count all your chickens, So get there, and they're like, yeah, we're going to crack you open. You got to have another one. And so talking to my guys, I was on the squad, and I was like, hey, guys, I got to step out for a little bit. And those guys, I'm with them every day and traveling the world with them, and they're the guys that I count on, and it was very emotional. Anyway, have the surgery, come out on the other end, and it was one of those things where it wasn't like before. I knew what the recovery was going to be like. I already knew mentally where I needed to be. So I came. And
you felt where it took you mentally the first time, and you knew that couldn't happen again, obviously.
Right. So I knew what I needed to maintain mentally. So anyway, started, had the surgery. Everything went well. Started that day walking, like trying to get that cardio back up, trying to get, a feeling of control again. Did that. The docs at the Marshalls, they got sent all my stuff, and they were like, hey, yeah, probably don't need to be doing this anymore. One, because they told me that I couldn't have any impact to my chest. So, like, if I got front kicked or I got, they were worried about, like, having two sternotomies where my sternum is broke and then wired back together, that it's already running the risk of, like, fractures and stuff like that, so it could actually fold and break. Yeah. And so they were like, yeah, if you got front kicked or, like, something like that.
Or just, like, the plane and
yeah.
hitting the seat in front of you maybe.
Yeah. I mean, mentally, that's where my head was, that something simple could – cause me to die. So I thought I was going back in the air, and they pretty much told me, like, hey, nah. So I was just like, I was devastated after that. I was like, man, career number 2. And I'd been there almost 8 years. So anyway, got out of that. I was having, once that second surgery came around, I was having such an emotional roller coaster. I was newly married. I was trying to learn what I was going to do next. I have no career. I have no path. I have nothing in front of me. And so they were throwing the pills at me again. Like VA was like, hey, man, you're having anxiety? Cool, here's Ativan, And I started taking them. And got pretty much dependent on them, and then was drinking really, really heavy, and I was having issues sleeping. I was having nightmares. It was putting a strain on my marriage. I was having dreams about being back in the field. I was having all kinds of stuff. So anyway, long story short, ended up getting a DUI. Tried to kill myself. Shouldn't say I tried to kill myself, but I was at that point. Like, I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to be here anymore, is a good way to put it. So not suicidal, but like not wanting to be here. Just because I felt like a strain on everybody emotionally, physically. So anyway, one of my best friends in the world, Clay Ivy, after that happened, and my wife was, beside herself, like, I'm not staying around. I'm going to go. And so I lived with him for several years while me and him flew together, and we're also in the Marine Corps together. different units. But he showed up at my house one morning and dragged me out of bed and said, "Come on, we're going to go to yoga." And he was a big yoga guy. Really helped him with stuff that he was dealing with. We're both diagnosed with PTSD. Both have issues in that regard. But he was like, he just drove down. It was probably 45 minutes south of him. He drove down, picked me up, dragged me in the car, took me to a yoga class. And I was like, that was cool. After the class, I was like, that was cool. I kind of liked it and stuff. And then me and him got into a competition mentality. Is like, who can do a handstand? Who can do a headstand? Who can do, and it started to grow where it was like, I'm going to practice at home. So I went and bought a cheap little mat at TJ Maxx and rolled it out on the floor. And like, they have all these online classes. Mm-hmm. And he would check on me every day. He was like, "You fucker better be doing yoga." And
dude, this story with your buddy pushing you reminds me so much of the DDP Jake the Snake Roberts thing. Did you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
DDP brings in Jake to kind of help him not recover, not from the same things you were doing with, but he had beat himself down mentally, was dependent on drugs. If you guys haven't seen that Jake the Snake documentary, you need to watch it. But
Resurrection.
Yeah. And he brings him in and he forces him to do yoga every day, but it's not like, "Hey, let's go do yoga." He's like, what your buddy's doing, like, "Hey, bitch, you better come do it," like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the mentality, and it's funny too, because we're two Marines that go to these yoga studios, and he teaches now. Mm-hmm. Me and him went through, got our cert, and been through several trainings together and stuff. But yoga's kind of split. So you get very much like the touchy-feely, mentally. I shouldn't say mentally, but you get like the touchy-feely religious kind of look at yoga.
Right.
And then there's like the physical practice. So there's a mental practice and a physical practice. The physical practice is just the movements. The mental practice is being able to stay in your own fucking head to finish the practice. And if you've never taken like a really hard yoga class, you won't understand what I'm talking about. But you're put in these positions that are uncomfortable to harden your mind to let you know that, hey, you're fine. You're going to be okay. And that's that your body can't go where your mind's never been.
Push yourself past those barriers and those boundaries, find out that you're capable of doing more than you ever thought you were.
Right. And that's what I fell in love with yoga, because it was bringing me back. It was hardening my mind. It was making me stronger.
Different with yoga is that it's all on you.
Right.
You don't have I never served, but I can only imagine that it's a lot easier to do a task if I had a DI screaming in my face.
Right.
But with yoga, you're going to get what you put into it. So if you think, this hurts, so I'll just back it down.
I'll just back out.
Even though you've been instructed that you can push through it, but you just chose not to. Right. That's probably like a personal gut check, right?
Yeah.
I've done yoga, some different types, and I've coming from the harder mentality of a MMA fighter. When you do yoga and you're feeling it hurt and you back down, it's like, nah, bitch.
Yeah.
Go back there. How could you do that? Such a thing, such an egregious thing. Yeah. So yoga's like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yoga's like that, but like you said, you can. No, I'm not feeling it today. I'm just going to back it off a little bit, and which is perfectly fine.
Especially if you have an injury. We're not talking about dealing with stuff.
So, but I started doing it, and I was showing up to classes and getting out of my comfort zone of where it's like, oh, poor pitiful me. Oh, you're weak. Oh, you got a bad heart. Oh, you got all this stuff. And that's where my head was before that. It was like, they won't let you be a Marine. They won't let you be a Marshal. They won't let you, do all this other stuff because you can't do it. And I started with that. I started going to classes. I would drive to Atlanta to Tough Love Yoga, which was a perfect name for what I was pursuing. And I trained with the owner there, Netta. And I just started, I needed it. I needed it every day. And my wife was seeing me come back to life. And she could tell, she was like, you need to go get on that yoga mat. Like when I was just being an asshole or something, she's like, "Have you practiced today?" And I'm like, "No."
No.
Yeah.
You already know the answer.
She's like, "You probably want to go in there and practice." So, but yeah, it was my friend Charlie. She always said, you can only do yoga so long before yoga starts doing you. And that being said, like, you mentally get into this state where it's like, hey, you're self-analyzing. So anytime you get on a yoga mat or anytime you get into meditation, you're forced inside yourself. And you're going to look at all those deep, dark crevices. You're going to start examining, what it is that's bothering you, what it is like, just with me, it was my heart. Me, it was like, I'm never going to be the person that I was born to be, and that self soul searching and you kind of come out on the other end. And there's days when you're in there and you're like, fuck this, I'm not going to stay in here. I'm just going to do the practice. And then there's days like, all right, let me try to figure this out. This meditation portion. So that's the mental practice versus the physical practice.
I had days that I was mentally in a really dark place, and I was telling Laborio how some of the personal things I was going through that were either family related or some things that I was going through, and I just didn't want to be in the gym. And he said, sometimes you come in here motivated, and you get the the mental aspect of what you're getting in, and you're really locked in the training. He says other days you just come in and punch the fucking clock.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, the work's got to get done.
Yeah,
and it's almost like that.
Yeah, yeah. It was a cool transition, and then I practiced for several years, just a personal practice, and then I really wanted other veterans, especially, to be able to experience this, because I know what it's like to be at the rock bottom. I shouldn't say rock bottom, but I've been in some low places, and I know what it feels like to be abandoned. Like, the Marine Corps is going to go on, the Army's going to go on, the Air Force is going to go on, and you are kind of left at that bus stop. It's like, well, what do I do now? So I really wanted to push a way for veterans, not only veterans, but people in general that don't understand that, to be able to experience that. So that's why I went to teacher training. That's what pushed me in that direction, because it helped me so much.
It gave you more of a purpose.
Right.
We're purpose-driven people, man.
Yeah.
And like being able to, in the beginning, I'm sure the purpose was just to get healthy. And mental health is, man, it's even more important. I don't want to say more important. It's just as important as your physical health.
Yeah.
There are two things that are completely related to one another. Like your physical and mental health are both just as important. And one being bad in one area can lead to being bad in another. And you can be good in one and be bad in another too, which is very dangerous.
Yeah.
Having those two things linked and synced is super important, I think. And what you're talking about, like with being able to help the veterans, I think that's super awesome. And you have been closer to the situation because you've had to deal with the PTS, and you've also, not that medicine can't help people. There are people that have anxiety that some of those pills actually do really help. But I don't think that the science is for everybody. I think that our brains and the way our bodies absorb the chemicals and the way that they work with us is there's not universal.
Right, it's different.
Take it this long or this dosage, that this will be the path. It's not how it is. And I think that having the ability for you to say, you don't need these pills, or maybe you still take these, but they're not going to be your cure. They're a Band-Aid, but there's ways that you can help yourself, that these doctors can't help you, but you can find a way to help you. And for you to be able to find that as an individual, that I have the ability to mold myself into the person that I want to be. I think that a lot of people seek that. And I think that sometimes they feel helpless. They feel that they can't help themselves. It's woe is me. the doctors can't help me. I can't help me. My mom or my dad or nobody can help me. I just need to end this.
Yeah.
But I think that for any time somebody, I'm always a proponent of jiu-jitsu. You know, we're a part of the We Defy Foundation, which is a foundation specifically for veterans that are combat wounded, and it could be mentally wounded or it could be physically wounded. They pay or give a scholarship for these veterans to find a certified foundation, near them for them to start doing jiu-jitsu, and they give them this scholarship program. We've had a couple people apply and get accepted, and I think that these people are longing for that same thing. They want to find something that they can help them get to be the person that they used to be or the person they still are. They just can't find it because it's buried beneath all that stuff, and their mind's not right because it's buried beneath all those chemicals and all those pills that they're taking. And it's like they're trying to find a way out of that abyss. And I think that anytime anybody can provide, that helping hand to pull them from there, I think that's just so awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I got started in yoga. Another Marine dragged me to a yoga class.
Super cool.
And it's something that, I'll never be able to repay. But that's what got me into teaching. That's what got me into wanting to pursue. I always say that you have to be an advocate for your own health, because you can go see doctors, and they have graduated, they have a degree, and they can tell you, hey, you're never going to walk again. Hey, you're never going to be able to do this. Hey, you're going to be on this medication for the rest of your life. And it's all bullshit. It's them pretty much looking at the situation like, oh, man, that guy's had 2 heart surgeries. He's never, not going to be able to do this anymore. And I am better off now than I was at 18. 1, mentally, I'm so much stronger. But 2, physically, I know how hard I can push my body.
Yeah.
So it's taken a lot of years to understand that. And people are on the front leg of it. They're like, man, I'm never going to be able to do it. Nah, you'll be able to do it, And in 10 years, you look back, as long as you keep pushing, don't slow down, don't back out, don't, let your mind start
stay the
beating
course.
You'll be able to do it.
Yeah.
So, and that's been big for me, mentally, physically, emotionally, and now as a parent, because I don't want. I mean, we deal with the same things. I don't want my kids to say I can't do it. No, you can fucking do it. You just have to get there and do it.
You little piece of shit. I'm just kidding. Love your kids.
I give that. Yoga saved my life, and and then almost 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, I drove by and I was like, who the hell is starting an American top team in Warner Robins?
Yeah, I just want to ask how you even found out about us. I remember you sent me an email. You sent me an email?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Josh Millwood, I guess, said, oh man, check his place out.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I drove by. I was like, I've always been a fan of the UFC.
Yeah, I was like, how'd you find out about jiu-jitsu or MMA, period?
So, the Marine Corps martial arts program is very jiu-jitsu oriented.
Mm-hmm.
It's got some different stuff, but started by Urso, and it is very much grappling. One mind, any weapon is their slogan and stuff. But that's where I got kind of a glimpse of jiu-jitsu. So I took Taekwondo when I was a kid, like I think every kid, for several years. That was my experience with karate and martial arts in general. But in the Marine Corps, it was more and more important to learn how to fight on the ground, grappling, and all the combatives programs. So got really into. That's when UFC was getting really big, all that kind of stuff. That was mid 2000s, and then. So anyway, I was like, man, I really want to get into learning how to grapple, and drove by, knew Josh. He was like, yeah, send him an email. So I sent you an email, and we sat down and talked, and I said, do you want to start a yoga program at Miller Martial Arts?
My hell yeah!
And so that was kind of how we connected, and then.
What does Joe Rogan say? Either he says it or or he references somebody that he talks to that said it, that yoga is like doing jiu-jitsu but against yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I thought that was a cool saying. I don't know if he said it or he says a guest of his said it.
Yeah. And that's really what it is. And that's what's drawn me so hard to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Because now you get to do yoga against somebody else.
Right. And it's that, like going back to the beginning of my story, my competition.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can battle yourself all day long. But me being an alpha and like wanting to be the best and like, you know, pushing myself as hard as I can. Like now I have guys that come in here and like smaller than me, bigger than me, it doesn't matter. They are all trying to beat me.
Right.
And so that's what's like really giving me that bug to keep pushing and, you know, want to be a better practitioner, because I think the big thing is like that. I think it's healthy to have that competition, not only with yourself but with other people.
Yeah. What kind of benefits do you think that you've seen just in like the short 2 years that you've been doing this? Like what kind of benefits or what type of fulfillment have you personally felt from doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
I have gotten back that kind of family mindset of we're all in this together, that kind of embrace the suck, because you are going to suck at jiu-jitsu when you first start.
Yeah, like a big thing that people say is like, can I come to your academy if I have no experience? Like, where the hell else would you have gotten the experience? Yeah. Like,
I get that in the yoga world.
Where would you get the experience if you never did?
Maybe when I get more flexible, I'll come to yoga.
Oh,
like,
dude, the thing.
Nah, you come to yoga for that.
Yeah, when people say I want to get in better shape before I start jiu-jitsu, I say, would you tell a teacher, nah, my kid's too stupid. He needs to get smarter before he can go to school? Mm-hmm. No,
it doesn't work that way.
You send your kid to school.
Yeah,
because school's where you learn. Same thing with like jiu-jitsu. Like I feel like Adam Redzovic, my good friend and one of the best teachers in the whole world for jiu-jitsu. He always talks about like the benefits of jiu-jitsu. He says that people are seeking one or multiple areas of fulfillment or gratification or stimulation. He says there's a physical stimulation, there is a mental stimulation, and that there is an emotional and or spiritual stimulation. Like it can be kind of put into 3 or 4 groups. The emotional, spiritual can be kind of part of the same thing, but they can also be separate. Somebody is looking for something new in their life. Jiu-jitsu can help with one or all of those. Mm-hmm. Like physically, you'll get stronger, right? You'll get more flexible doing jiu-jitsu. You'll get in better shape. You can lose weight. You can increase your aerobic capacity. You can increase your anaerobic threshold. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do strength and conditioning, but jiu-jitsu can help with these things.
And strength can help with jiu-jitsu.
Right. And mentally, so you get some physical stimulation, mental stimulation. You start to kind of understand the chess match that is jiu-jitsu, not checkers. Although you might be playing checkers in the beginning, jiu-jitsu is very much like chess. There's an end goal, the checkmate, which is the submission of your opponent. And there are a lot of ways to go about that. You have all these roads that lead to this submission, and there are many submissions. There are many sweeps. There are many guard passes. There are many forms of retention and forms of defense and escapes and all this. And the roads just never end. And this is such a newer martial art that the techniques are developing still at a very fast rate. You know, in wrestling, which has been around thousands of years, I think that now's a cool time because people are just doing more grappling, period. There's people wrestling that come from jiu-jitsu, and I think that the internet is helping with the creativity, and there are some newer things, but wrestling's been around a long time. When you show somebody something, if they have a strong background, they've been wrestling 20 years, they're not going to say, never seen that before. They might say, I never did that variation.
Yeah.
But in jiu-jitsu, people were doing stuff yet they never seen before.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that that's like cool. So there's a mental stimulation. Then you have the emotional / spiritual, And I think that what you're talking about, the camaraderie with the team environment, that can be part of a spiritual or an emotional thing. I think that when you get to a physical realm, your heart rate gets to a certain area and the workout's done, the endorphins release, where those physical and emotional can be part of the same thing. But then when you start realizing the boundaries that you push yourself past and that you're becoming a new person and that your jiu-jitsu is a reflection of you, and you're not only getting better at it, but you're discovering new parts of this as you go. You're also kind of discovering new parts of yourself. And I think that when people put their children into martial arts or jiu-jitsu, they see the character development. That's a big important thing, the discipline and all this stuff. But when they come in as an adult, a fully grown individual, they're like, oh yeah, I just want to get in shape, or I just want to learn these fucking cool moves to defend myself or my family.
Right.
But then they start seeing that they're getting the same thing. And not from like somebody like me who's 35 yelling at a 50-year-old man, like, come on, push. That's not what I'm talking about. Like you talked about yoga, you start to listen to the guidance of not just the instructor, but your training partners and the people who have been there before. And you're also starting to see things through your own lens. You can't see it through somebody else's. They can help you see it, but you're only seeing it the way that you can see it. But when you see how broad it is and you start to see that your character is actually developing through jiu-jitsu and that you start making friends or at least relationships with people that you otherwise would never have.
Right.
I wouldn't be friends with a 58-year-old dude, you know, like, or a 75-year-old guy. Like, where would I come into contact with a 75-year-old dude and be his buddy who used to be a pilot or something like that? Like that, we would not float in the same circles if it wasn't for jiu-jitsu. So you start to see how like your character can broaden, your relationships can broaden, you can become more wise, you can see things in life, how they translate to jiu-jitsu, and then you can take those things that you've seen in jiu-jitsu and hopefully put in your personal life, and you can broaden and you can develop. People talk about personal development or character development. Jiu-jitsu can absolutely give you that, I think.
Yeah.
Humility is, I think, the biggest one, which is important.
Yeah. Yeah, and you find that I draw parallels a lot between yoga and jiu-jitsu because, like I said, it's not so cut and dry as, yeah, this is a battle within yoga, and then this is a battle against somebody else, jiu-jitsu.
And within. Because when they put you in a bad spot, you're no longer competing against that person. Like, if you're in the bad position, like, you're only competing against them when you're trying to get the good position.
Yeah.
When you're in the bad position, you better be focusing more on yourself and not that other person.
Yeah.
Like, are my elbows in? Am I protecting my neck? Am I protecting my joints? Now that I'm in this bad spot, can I survive? Now that I can survive, can I escape? If I escape, am I escaping to a worse position or equally as bad or getting more toward neutral? Now that I'm getting more toward neutral, can now I go on the attack? If you're thinking about that guy the whole time, like, oh, I can't let him do this to me, or maybe I can bump from here so I can get him back. Like, it's only going to be downward for you when you start thinking like that.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, it's like I said, when you first start, you're drinking from a fire hose.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then you start throwing, like, MMA in it. And everybody's like, oh, man, I want to train MMA. I want to do that. You know, I want to do that stuff. And then it's like, okay, you're drinking from a fire hose, and the floor is lava, and there's spiders being dropped on top of you. You know, it's like it's chaos.
You're drinking from the hydrant, not even the hose.
Yeah.
Like somebody unscrewed.
Yeah. It's funny to me.
We'll have Lathan Lawson in here. He can tell us what the hell those nuts are on the fire hydrant.
Yeah.
The cap that pulls off.
It's like you get into it and you're like, oh man, this is great. Like, I'm starting to understand the ground game. You know, now they're gonna kick you and punch you. Now there's a whole other. You know, it's like, so it's cool to me to put myself. I really enjoy putting myself in uncomfortable positions to, one, mentally harden, and two, understand where my mind can go. And I think that's very important because we have gotten, in all aspects of life, we've gotten to a kinder, gentler way of life.
Sedentary.
But if you step out of that box, if you put yourself in an uncomfortable position, like, you know as well as I do, like, people on the outside, they're like, oh, man, there's a bunch of fighters in there. There's a bunch, and you hang out with professional fighters and stuff like that. Nah, they're not. They're the most normal, most down-to-earth people, aside from some, that you will ever meet, because they already put themselves in these stressful they know where they can and can't go.
We're just people.
And so it's
people are people.
But like everybody from the outside is like, oh man, these guys must have something wrong with them. They
I mean, maybe.
but it's
yeah.
It's interesting.
That's after the fact.
It's very interesting. So I really enjoy the competition. I think that's what jiu-jitsu gives me the most, is the ability to mentally, physically, emotionally. Like there's some days, I'm on the mat every day, and there's some days that I come in and, I'm not here mentally, and I can still go through the motions.
Yeah, still punch the clock, right?
So I mean, that's what I love about it.
What are you doing now?
So I'm teaching here. Still teaching at some other schools. I kind of took a step back just because I was moving, trying to get my house in order and stuff like that.
Moving in the middle of Corona season.
Yeah. So, but I teach. I was teaching at Sparks Yoga in Macon. I was teaching at Homegrown. I'm still teaching at Homegrown in Warner Robins, and here Mill Martial Arts, running the yoga program here, chasing 2 kids and trying to keep it all intact. So,
what's next?
Give me a couple years, and
yeah.
But yeah, I just want to get my knowledge up and my ability to control situations, and just continue to practice.
Closing thoughts?
Man, it was good. I enjoyed. If anybody's got any questions about my story, or or is struggling with any of that stuff, let me know. Like I said, I'm here every day. Hit me up on Instagram, JoeBoyFresh. Yeah.
So, I think that if anybody is out there struggling, the biggest thing that you can do is if you do come across people that are willing to help, even if they haven't been through the same thing you've been through, or maybe they weren't a veteran or whatever, there's people that can help, period. Even though they haven't seen things through your eyes. And so whether it's, I'm sure there's guys, dude, this is a social media age. Find, if you're a veteran, a yoga for veterans, or the We Defy Foundation to get you in jiu-jitsu. But if you don't have anything like that near you, look at DDP yoga. These guys it was made to help people through professional wrestling who have physical problems, who have mental problems, who did live life on the road. Maybe you had a job where you had a life on the road and you have PTS related to something like that. But there are people that can help even though they didn't do the same thing as you. If you can't find a DDP yoga near you in the Atlanta area with Stevie Richards or Diamond Dallas Page or somebody like that, then find just a yoga spot near you. It's there are outlets out there that are there for you, and I think that you might be surprised that you can get benefit even though it's not for your niche history that you come from.
Yeah, I don't, and I never try to push anybody to yoga. That's one of my big things is do something that mentally stimulates you. It doesn't matter. I mean, people hate running, and people go out and run every day.
And people love running.
And yeah,
people that love it.
And there's people that hate running that run every day.
Yeah.
Because it puts them in that position fuck, I hate this.
I got to push through
this. But find something that is going to stimulate you mentally and physically at the same time. Whether it be Olympic lifting, whether it be CrossFit, whether it be jiu-jitsu, whether it be yoga, whether it be whatever. You need that physical exertion to reach that point of your brain releasing those endorphins for you to even keel that mental health. So that's my final thoughts. It doesn't have to be anything that we're talking about. You can just be fans of Coles or whatever, but go out and find something that you...
There are dozens of you.
Go out and find something that's mentally going to push you.
Well, thank you. It was a big first. You're the first veteran we've had on. We're going to have more. You're the first law enforcement officer that we've had on. You're the first Yogi that we have had on, and the first white belt that we have had on, and Jiggly Joe Boy Fresh 100.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah.